Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Groovy podcast. I am Ken Kousen, podcasting from Marlborough, Connecticut, and as always, I am joined by...
I'm Baruch Sadogursky, podcasting today from London, United Kingdom, and this is episode 65.
Right.
And that's season 2, episode 15.
Yeah, when do we finish season 2? Did we decide that?
I don't know. Maybe we can do it after this episode.
Or do you think we should go to the end of the year?
We can go to the end of the year as well.
Be a calendar year thing. I don't know. I mean, we're just making it up anyway. What are you doing in London?
I'm here for DevRelCon, Developer Relations Conference, and I'm super excited about this conference. I guess one of my most exciting conferences throughout the year, because that's the conference when I actually come to learn much more than to work. That's a
cool. Bold statement. I mean, you go to an awful lot of conferences, and this is one you really like, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's different because it's about what my profession is opposite to, you know, the rest of them. When I enjoy all of them tremendously, but this is really special.
Oh, wonderful. Were you there? I think the O'Reilly had a software architecture conference there last week.
Yeah, last week it was O'Reilly Software Architecture and Velocity. I was at Velocity. Well, they're co-located, so it's kind of the same, but yeah.
Oh, that's why people get them mixed up. Yeah, I know a few people at SACon. You know, Neil Ford and a few others are there. You know, no fluff speakers. And
yeah, Neil Ford, I think if I remember correctly, is the conference chair.
Yes,
co-chair at least. Yeah.
Now next week. Is it next week? Are you going to DevOps in Belgium, right?
I think it's next week. I'm not going. I'm going on vacation. That's why I suggested finishing the season now. But yeah, are you going to Velocity to DevOps Belgium?
I haven't been to any of the DevOps conferences. I think about it every year, but I just haven't pulled the trigger. You know, I've been cutting back on my travel. I haven't been doing a whole lot, but I ought to think about it. I know, of course, to segue into something we probably should be talking about. Apparently on the 15th, I think, Graham Roche will be talking about Micronaut. And of course, that brings up the first of, I don't have them first in the order in the release notes, but the biggest event, of course, since our last podcast is that Micronaut is now officially 1.0 GA.
Yeah, and those are obviously great news, and I think Micronaut now has a beautiful spotlight, and people are excited about. People are talking about it. Gets its fair share on conferences. So just Oracle Code 1, Graham Roche received whatever
the Groundbreaker Award.
Groundbreaker Award for his work on Groovy, Grails, and Micronaut, and actually mentioned Micronaut to stage. There are a couple of talks about it. And DevOps Belgium, we have 3 talks about Micronaut as well, which is not bad at all, I would say.
Now we were both at Oracle Code 1. I didn't make it to that the keynote where they announced where Graham got his award. Were you at that one?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why you say you mentioned it a few times and everything.
Yeah, so the idea of this Groundbreakers Award is really to award the people who shaped the our industry as software development. So I think the founder of Python was there, and our friend Charles Natter representing JRuby was there, and Graham was there and getting this award on behalf of really Groovy community and whoever created and contributed to Groovy language, and more to the point of Graham, obviously Grails, and he actually wasn't sure should he kind of plug Micronaut on this stage or not, and I urged him to do so, and I was really glad to hear that he actually managed to mention Micronaut in his thank you speech as really the next thing that he's working at, and there on CI working at, and something that excites us as a community.
I put a link to the award page for that in the show notes. I mean, because it was a very big deal. So Guido van Rossum, of course, the creator of Python, was there, and Charles Nutter, you mentioned, Doug Cutting, co-creator of Hadoop. I didn't know him, and the fifth person was okay. How do you pronounce it? Neha Narkidi,
Yeah, I think so. And
co-founder and CTO of Apache Kafka.
yes, she's Victor's boss's boss.
So I mean, it was a very prestigious group of people. I was very impressed, and of course, Graham deserves it as much as anybody. You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
just a towering figure in our community, of course, and entirely typical of Graham being humble, wondering whether he should even mention Micronaut on the stage. Yeah, very normal for that. Yeah, I was sorry I missed that keynote, but by the way, you saw the Oracle thing where they used to, he's a groundbreaker. It's him itself. Now my title has changed from Oracle Dev Champion. They had Oracle Developer Champions. You know what we're called now?
Yeah, groundbreaker ambassadors.
Yeah, it's a title I'm actually embarrassed to tell people.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of it's a little bit weird. I understand that they try to find their way in being not only Java but promoting other languages, especially that they use and support on Oracle Cloud.
Yeah, but I was very happy with the title Developer Champion. The idea of being a groundbreaker ambassador, I don't even know what that means, really.
Yeah, that's very weird couple of words.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they work together. I think the idea kind of whoever do something with Oracle Cloud are Oracle groundbreakers, and we are the ambassadors of groundbreakers. It's kind of,
I don't know. I mean, that's right. Were you at that day-long meeting as well? I don't even remember.
No, it was on a weekend, so
I went to the briefing because I mean it's my first year at this thing, so I went to the briefing and they had really good internet access and and power, for the laptop. So I actually got a lot of work done. I mean, talking about the Oracle Cloud, and I'm sitting here going, okay, I mean, yeah, I'll use it once or twice. I don't know. I just okay, I'm really not a good ambassador, I suppose. And we'll see whether that lasts or not.
Well, I don't know. We shouldn't be ambassadors of Oracle Cloud, right? That's what I kind of say for myself.
I mean, the Java champion briefing the next day, that was my first one of those, which that was actually interesting. And a lot of people I know and like were there. I mean, Trisha G was there, and well, it was a whole wide range of people. Andre Samire and Isha. Isha was actually at the Groundbreaker ambassador review.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was okay, So I went through that. I don't know if I'll be doing it again. I only had one talk at the conference. I did functional programming in Groovy, Java, and Kotlin, because why not, right?
Yeah, because now you bring Kotlin with you everywhere.
Well, I have no choice. But I mean, and even though it wasn't marketed or anything, and it wasn't recorded either, we got a fair number of people. It was really good. And I was in the room next to Venkat, so I was surprised I had anybody. Venkat.
Well, it is still a big conference. It's still a big conference, so you can fill a room even next to Venkat.
And of course, the only sad thing I found at the conference, of course, is that at the JFrog booth, I did not win the JFrog espresso machine. That was sad.
Yeah, no, I did my best to rig this as much as possible. Unfortunately, I was scrutinized and couldn't bluntly just toss up the results. But
no, that's only fair. I get it. We should say something else about Micronaut, though. I mean, we've been waiting for the 1.0 release. And boy, OCI has got serious marketing chops. I have been extremely impressed with the marketing they've done around this, to the point where now down at, I didn't put it in the show notes, but at next year's, what's the name of the conference? The one in Atlanta that we're going. What's that? DevNext, right? at Dev Nexus, they actually announced was it a 2GM track? Did you see
Yeah,
that? So
yeah,
we're used to 2GX, Groovy, Grails, Griffon, Gradle, Experience, or whatever. And here now it's Groovy, Grails, and Micronaut, which is really clever, of course.
yeah.
And so they're going to have a track at Dev Nexus for that. And we'll see how that goes. That'll be interesting.
No,
Um,
I'm really happy about Micronaut in general because it brings new excitement to our kind of a little bit of swamp that started to be, well, we are not sure. It's all like there is nothing like new and excitement. So here we go. Micronaut is super excited, and people like it. People play with it. People benchmark it with the others. There is action. It's good. I like it.
Sure. The only problem, and not a problem exactly, but from a Groovy point of view, it's the problem is that, of course, it supports Java and Kotlin, so that it's not necessarily going to drive people into the Groovy community. It's not going to be it's not the killer app necessarily that Grails was or Spock is, or others, but still, I mean, it's a wonderful accomplishment, and I don't know whether it'll catch on or not, but by golly, they're doing everything they can to make it catch on. I did not add all the talks that Graham and Jeff Brown have been doing on Micronaut because there's just too many to even add. They're going obviously all over the world. I did add in, however, that next week on the 14th, I guess it is, Graham is doing an online free webinar via the OCI site that is an introduction to Micronaut. So all those people have been waiting to see, do they really get, 48 millisecond startup and all that kind of thing? Like they obviously do. All those things. He's going to be talking about Micronaut online for anybody who wants to see it on November 14th. So I encourage you to sign up at the OCI site and attend that. Now, I don't think things change radically from the last couple release candidates. So I think I've seen it, and it is dazzling. Obviously, it's very, very impressive how it works. But if you haven't seen it, if you've been waiting, now would be a good time to take a look at that. Also, I did put in a link in the show notes just to try to break out of our little community, just the people we know all the time. A person by the name of Michael Hunger. I don't know him personally. At any rate, he had written a series of blog posts on Micronaut. He called it Ad Astra or whatever, or that was the first one. And when Micronaut went 1.0, he updated all of those blog posts. So I put the link in the show notes. It's again, somebody, as it's probably it's got to be Hunger because I think it's German. The posts were originally published in German, but they've all been translated to English. It's now updated to 1.0, and I found it fascinating. I think, at any rate, it just looks like it's very interesting, and he's done an excellent job talking about what it is, why to use it, how to get started, using the CLI. In other words, they're a lot more extensive than your normal simple blog posts.
Yeah, and he's definitely not like our usual suspect, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look at what he does, he works on Neo4j and GraphQL, Kotlin, and Spring and Kafka. Groovy is not in the list, so I guess his interest in Micronaut comes from the Kotlin perspective, which is fine.
Yeah. So at any rate, I added that. Figured that's a good idea. There was also a blog post on, what was it called? Oops, I hit the link here. I got to keep, I probably should add links to the show notes that open in a
new tab. Yeah, I was planning to tell it to you for
I keep thinking about it, but I don't use Markdown on a regular basis. I use AsciiDoc. I live on AsciiDoc. All O'Reilly books are written on AsciiDoc and everything, but whatever. There was a nice little blog post by, I don't have, it's a GitHub repository, but I'm looking for who did it. Any rate, it's called containerizing a Micronaut application with Jib, J-I-B.
Yep.
Right, and so that was a GitHub post under, interestingly enough, a repository.
It's actually, from what I understand, it's one of the official examples of Jib.
Yeah, Google Container Tools.
Yes.
And have you used Jib before? I'm not even
Yeah,
sure
so
what it is.
we obviously are familiar with Jib and JFrog because Artifactory is one of the options for container image registries.
Ah,
So yeah, Jib is a very easy tool to containerize any JVM, I would say, based application.
okay.
Um, and for obviously they're very easy to do with Maven plugin, with Gradle plugin, and the examples that they have will be stuff like pure Java application or Spring Boot and Micronaut. There are actually like three examples: Java application, Spring Boot, and Micronaut. That's basically all.
Well, that's really nice. So,
Yeah,
anyway, I put a link in there so you can take a look at that one also. I should mention that Groovy 2.5.3 was officially released. So I put a link to the show notes there. We mentioned it last time because that was one where they fixed the problem they were having with running on Java 11.
yeah, with all the
And
warnings and well, with the errors, the
you
warnings.
still get, yeah, you still get the Gradle warnings just because until they figure a workaround for the caching stuff, that's you're going to get warnings. But regardless, it was not working properly on Java 11, and now Java 11 is long-term support, and everybody's supposed to move to that. I'm glad to see all the Groovy stuff works fine on that. Everything I've been doing with Groovy 2.5.3 has worked just out of the box, exactly the way you expect it to now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's good. I don't know what the plan or the schedule is for Groovy 3, but I presume that's the next big thing on the horizon. And that, of course, will get rid of the warnings and that'll go to all the latest features and all the new syntax we've been talking about. So we'll look forward to that. I'm guessing sometime in the new year. Does that seem reasonable to you?
Yeah, I think the target was the kind of the end of the year. So, with software projects, long ones, complicated ones, probably will be pushed a little bit. But yeah, I think it's not like light
Well,
years ahead. I think it's pretty soon.
Well, and the only person who's actively funded to work on Groovy directly would be Paul King. Now, of course, that's the guy you want funded for it, and he's only part-time at OCI, also working on Grails related topics. So, I mean, I get it. And of course, that means if you know anybody or if you're interested in helping out on the project, I'm sure there are many open issues and they would welcome contributions to get involved there. So it's a very friendly community. Go ahead and take a look.
Yeah.
But 2.5.3 was officially released, and that's good. And again, the biggest change there is that it runs cleanly under Java 11 with no problems anymore. And I didn't look to see other major changes. I don't remember seeing anything terribly significant. If I just glance at the release notes, it's funny that it comes out now under the Apache blog.
Yes.
I mean, that
Yes.
makes sense. It's just a reminder that it's all Apache stuff, and it mostly just says that it's a maintenance release. It's 50 bug fixes and improvements, and they've got various release notes. I don't see anything that's terribly profound.
Yeah, I think the running is Java 11 is the big deal.
Yeah, which is great. So that was very helpful. Okay, now the other release that I saw this morning, actually, that's why I had to add it right away. Our good friend Andres Almire,
Mm-hmm.
announced that Griffon, Griffon, the desktop Groovy approach or desktop framework based on Groovy, released version 2.15.1. There's
It's
also
a
a
it's a
release.
tiny release with one bug fix. I guess it's good thing to see the release, but it's not much in it.
No, and it's not supposed to be, but it's good to know A, that the project is still very active,
Exactly. Exactly.
and B, that they are improving things. I keep planning to get back to Griffon, to look at it because you've got all these GUI toolkits and all these capabilities built into it. And of course, the Griffon book at Manning is rather out of date, I'm afraid. So it's time to re-examine it. And I think I said that on the last time, so I should probably move on. But at any rate, Glad to see that still going on, and I wouldn't want Andres to think we forgot about him.
Mm-hmm.
Very important there. Now, the other major thing that's coming, it's not quite here yet, is Gradle 5. Now, Gradle 5 did put out its first release candidate. So Gradle 5 RC1, and that has made it definitely clear that the next version of Gradle is not another in the 4 dot sequence, although there may be others in the 4 dot sequence. They are going gangbusters toward Gradle 5.0.
And this is a huge release by all means. It is very, very big.
Yeah. So of course the biggest thing in there that again it's not the thing we're going to be talking about that much, but it's fact of life, is that there'll be a Kotlin DSL which will go 1.0. If you look at Gradle 4.10.2, the current release, and just do a Gradle-V, it tells you that the Kotlin DSL is at like 1.0 release candidate 6 or something. I mean, they are really close to being finished on that. And that will be 1.0 inside of Gradle 5. But they also will have Java 11 support, and they'll have, what do they call it? Dependency version alignment?
Yeah, that's actually, that's what in Maven called the bill of materials, the BOM, that you can actually import definition of versions into your project and not, be concerned with compatibility between different your different dependencies. Obviously, it was supported in Gradle for a very long time by a couple of plugins. One from Spring, the other from Netflix OSS. But now it is a feature of the tool itself.
Well, I knew that Spring Boot did it all the time because Spring people have been very fond of using Maven and parent bombs and all of that, and they use bombs all the time. So I knew that their plugin basically ported that capability to Gradle. Now, as you say, it'll be a part of Gradle natively. It'll build. By the way, Spring Boot, for what it's worth, also released their latest version, 2.1, last week. And the most important part of that, from my point of view, is it upgraded to Hibernate 5.3. And Hibernate 5.3 is the first one that runs cleanly under Java 11. See, I tried using an older project with Gradle or Spring Boot 2.0, and the place everything failed would be in the Hibernate annotations, JPA, and all of that. But I updated everything to 2.1, and that all works cleanly now. So I assume when Grails 4 comes out, which I believe there's going to start to be release candidates on that relatively soon, then they will build on top of the latest, and then all of their issues
of course
will go away too.
Yes.
Was there anything else major you wanted to mention about Gradle 5, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, so basically all the incubating features for years in Grails 4, like the init plugin, actually got now out of incubation, and there are features of the tool now. There are, I think, like 20 of them. And the Gradle build init plugin, that's something that I still, have a sweet spot because it was actually something that grew out of something that I created many, many years ago. And the documentation for Gradle init actually points to my abandoned GitHub project, which was kind of the inception of Gradle init for automatically converting bombs to build.gradle files. They generate Groovy DSL. I don't know if they updated it to generate Kotlin DSL. Probably they did, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've been using the Gradle init plugin for many, many years in presentations and in training classes because it's a good way to get something to get started. And of course, as you say, it's step one in any POM conversion, in any port from Maven to Gradle. I'd forgotten that POM conversion actually, that you were actually part of that all those years ago.
Yeah, no, it still only emits Groovy DSL. Okay, so
So, but at any rate, so that's coming out of. It was always labeled as incubating, and
Yeah, so that's
what incubating at Gradle mostly means is how bad they are at getting rid of the word incubating. I mean, they've got so many things that are stable that they just never take off the word incubating on.
I think they got really kind of bad experience with the Maven versus Maven publication and
Right.
Ant versus Ant publication when they hurried to finalize a way they publish artifacts and just to discover how bad it was, and then they had kind of two running side by side for many years. So now they are very cautious with declaring the things actually final. I think a span of a major version, and this is what their incubation policy now actually makes sense. Whatever enters in Groovy 4 in Gradle 4 as incubating will be finalized in Gradle 5, etc. So,
well, it's good that it's available now, and I mean they're releasing it. I noticed a couple little things like now you can actually do that it generates a .git ignore file when you do an init there, which is good. And they're finally bringing back the search box on the documentation page because I always had to go back to Google to do that. But of course, if we're going to mention Gradle, we should at least, the task timeouts. Oh, I didn't notice that. They actually are going to have timeout duration for a task, which that's a good idea. That's a very helpful thing. I don't see anything else major, although I imagine the plugin authoring stuff they're going to improve, right? So we'll be talking much more about that when Gradle 5 actually comes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, we can't talk about Gradle without mentioning, one of their new employees, right? Jen Strader, who has been on the podcast a few times, of course, and always welcome, is the latest, as far as I know, Gradle employee. She's a developer advocate, so she's in your field, if you will.
And that's interestingly enough, because I think she's the first developer advocate for Gradle, which for me it's kind of strange because obviously Gradle always was very developer centric or developer serving a product and company who market to developers, and doing it without a developer relations team was kind of a very strange for me. Without developer advocate was very strange for me. And
Eric, you deal with Eric Wendelin, right?
He was like official developer advocate, maybe.
He was more in charge of user experience.
Yeah. Okay, that's a little bit different, and it's funny that we are talking about it today while I'm in DevRelCon, because there is like all discussion of what developer relation team is and what are the roles in it, and the developer experience and developer advocate, there are different roles under the same team. So and I have to say that for me personally, Gradle was always like a option B. If I had to name a company that I want to go and be a developer advocate for, Gradle was always, I guess, still is a very strong option to consider. So I think it's a great job. I'm really happy for Jen, and obviously we both wish her the best of luck, and we are sure she will do great.
Yeah, we definitely wish her all the best, and hopefully Gradle will make good use of her talents as well. Give her an opportunity to really shine there. So we'll talk. Maybe we'll have her on back when Gradle 5 comes out. That would seem to be a legitimate time there. So, at any rate, that's another release that I wanted to mention. I think that's all the releases that I put in there. I'm not aware of any other major. I mean, as I say, Grails is kind of starting to shift gears for the 4 betas, where we'll see that change. But other than that, I didn't see any other major announcements. Now, there was also, getting back to the basic news items, there was a Daniel Sun, one of the core team members, tweeted about a Groovy handler for how do you pronounce it? It looks to me like Nginx or Nginx.
Nginx. Engine like a car engine, and then X.
Yeah, and at any rate, he tweeted about a blog post that they put up about a Groovy handler for Nginx. So I put a link in there in case you happen to work with that. Do you ever work with that?
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah. Of course, we again we have a tool which is basically a server, so we have to support stuff like
Hmm.
Apache, Apache proxy and HA proxy and Nginx. And I have to say that writing configurations for Nginx never was fun, and now it is because it's actually Groovy DSL. Those are it's super cool. It has all the support of all the IDEs and what's not, and it's just it's just another tool that embraced Groovy for their DSL, and we welcome it because we think that Groovy is the right language to write your DSL. So that's really cool.
Yeah, so that was helpful. The only other thing, oh, I guess I should mention also Sergio Delamo, in addition to, and we'll come back to the whole Greech issue, which is wonderful, that he's resurrecting the Greech conference, which
Yep.
looked like it was only gone for about a month.
That's true. That's
But
true.
he also has been doing some presentations at OCI. I think he did a Spock presentation there. And what's coming up, and I added it to the webinar, is he's got the webinar list. He's got one coming this week. I think it's Friday on the 9th, acceptance testing with Jeb. I always felt like Jeb was simply just underrated. At the amount of power you get, it simply never really got the publicity. Not as bad as Jeepers, GPARS. Boy, was that never got the publicity it deserved.
Yeah,
I think
it
it's
really should have
criminally
been part of
underused.
the language,
Yeah.
and that's
But
why.
at any rate, Jeb too, I think, is really deserves more publicity. And Sergio's doing a webinar on that. Again, a free webinar on the 9th. So I do recommend anyone who hasn't seen Jeb in action, he would be an excellent person to watch using it. But if you're also curious, there was a nice another blog post out there. Where did I put this? Michael Kutz, I suppose his name is,
Yeah.
had a GitHub repository where he had workshop materials on UI testing workshop with Jeb and Spock. And I thought it was funny that he didn't use Gradle, he used Gmaven Plus to
Yeah.
make it all
Do you
work.
remember that?
Yeah,
That's
well, I mean, but
that's
that's also a segue to mention, the build tool market share, which is part of what came out of that whole state of the Octaverse. You saw that, right? The
yes, yes.
the the GitHub people released a state of the Octaverse report, and it talked about most popular languages and all these different things. And from what I gather, the market share ratings for Gradle versus Maven still look like Maven's somewhere in the 70s and Gradle has most of the rest, so it's in the 20s.
Hmm.
Then the others are real small fry, that don't have a whole lot of usage. SBT
Hmm.
and what's the other one? Begins with a B. Um, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to think about it. But it's I thought it was from Google, maybe Blaze or something. Not Blaze.
Blaze, yeah, yeah,
You know what I don't have the word
Basil,
right.
Basil, Basil.
Basil, yeah, Basel, right? Or Basil. How, I mean, if you're Swiss,
Whatever.
that's
I don't know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but at any rate, that one is out there, but they're all very small. In other words, I kind of understand that the Gradle people felt performance was a big issue for them for several years. And now that they have achieved extraordinary performance superiority over Maven, I don't even think it's close anymore. Now the focus has turned to usability and user interaction and user experience and everything as a way to break out of the smaller adoption rates and move into the larger community. And of course, this is their stated reason for adopting Kotlin as a DSL too.
Hmm.
We'll see if that does it. But at any rate, it was interesting to see that the UI testing workshop used Gmaven Plus, because why not? A lot of people use Maven. That'll make it easier. We'll see how Gradle grows in the future. I always liked Jeb with Spock too, and I'm glad to see it get a little bit more publicity these days.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't know. Maybe we are just not aware. But is there like active development on Jeb? I mean,
Um,
the latest I just checked here real quick. The latest release is 2.2, and I want to see when it was released and what's going on.
That's an
So
interesting question.
latest commit was on August 9th.
Huh. So not terribly active lately. Okay.
Right, and there are 32 releases, and the last was on August 5th.
You do remember this is the Groovy podcast, right? We're supposed to be saying nice things about these
We
things.
try, we try. I completely agree with you that Jab is great, and just for whoever is not familiar with it at all, it's the browser automation for UI testing like Selenium, but with Groovy DSL on top of it, which makes it great. I'm
Yeah, but
just
here you just pointed out when the last commit was. I'm
Yeah,
sure somebody from the team, well, actually, I would think somebody from the team would now contact us, except that who knows that anybody's listening to us anyway. So maybe,
or what is Jab team?
yeah, it would be nice to hear if anybody from the team is active and wants to talk about it. I kind of feel partly like that about Spock. It's not that, I mean, Spock released 1.2 relatively recently, but they're not active on the forums or other places. I'd like to know where they've moved all those discussions,
Yeah,
because
no,
clearly
but
they're still doing
we see
commits.
commits, we see
Yeah.
releases, we see stuff going on with Spock, with Jab. You know,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
So,
it's not that. And I think so. It was obviously Luke Daly for a very long time ago. It was his project. He was actively contributing to it, but he kind of stopped many
well,
years.
his time is probably taken up by Gradle, I would think,
Yes,
primary
yes.
position.
And then Martin Erdman took over, and he's the one who actually does whatever is happening in Jab. But again, it's not very active, unfortunately.
Well, we'll see. Okay. Maybe we will hear something. I don't know. Now, of course, the place to hear something, as Jen again reminded us on Twitter, is Groovy has a Slack channel,
Yep.
and it's open to anyone, although you do have an approval process because they do check to try to find out if you're a bot. They do try to keep out bots and trolls and things like that. So I'm sure somebody could ask there on Groovy Slack as to what's going on. So of course there's a link in the show notes in case to the sign-in page if you want to register for the Groovy Slack. So it's a
And
good
you
place to be.
definitely should. Yes.
Now, with that, we should mention, of course, the resurrection of Breach. That Sergio Delamo stepped in. Or is it Sergio Delamo or is it Delamo Caballero? I don't quite get the distinction. I've seen it written in a couple ways. I mean, I know he's our friend, but still, any rate, he has brought back Breach, and the call for papers is currently open, and it will be open until I think the middle of January. But they already have
Yes.
several people signed. The doorbuster tickets are already going fast. The Groovy community really wanted this conference. It really was, something that had a lot of appeal, and it was low cost. And of course, Madrid in May is always a very appealing. The conference is May 27th through 29th, according to what I see there.
Yes,
Yeah, so
that's
I
what.
do want to mention, no, I'm sorry, that was Great Conf. March 28th through 30th.
March 20,
Yeah.
28, 29, and 30. Yes.
Yeah, March 28th is a workshop day, I think, and then 29th and 30th would be the conference proper. Any rate, so Greach is linked in the show notes, and of course the link I put in was not to Greach, it was to the call for papers. But you
Yes.
can go to the website as well and see who's already going.
It's
So
greechconf.com, obviously. Yes.
right,
And yeah, the blog post about Greech 2019 that won't gonna happen is gone. It's not on the web page anymore, and it's like nothing happened.
well, that's okay, no problem. I think I'm sure Ivan Lopez, who had been doing a lot of it before, will help out. I'm sure they'll be
Yes, yes,
involved.
absolutely.
But this way, Sergio's taking it over, and my condolences to whatever free time Sergio was supposed to have between now and then.
Yeah, no, but it's
It's a lot of
it's
work.
it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of excitement. Of course, it's hard work, but organizing conference is a lot of fun.
Now, what I accidentally was mentioning the dates to is the other thing that got tweeted yesterday or today was that Great Conf in EU, the one that we love every year in Copenhagen is also open for call for papers now. That is the one at the end of May.
That's the
That's
end of
May
May. Yes,
27th
that's the end of
period, right?
May.
I it's a generally that's a month before or 2 months before Great Conf in the U.S. So I haven't heard anything about that yet, but it's good to see the European one is still going in Copenhagen, and of course, I don't know if we've mentioned it enough. Micronaut 2 has its own Micronaut Summit that will be in Chicago in April. So
Yeah.
April 15th through 17th. The call for papers for that ends next week. No, 10 days from now, November 16th. So that if you're interested in that, be sure to go and take a look.
So
And that,
there is a Groovy or Groovy related conference every month.
yeah, and
Starting
that's the
April,
first
May.
dedicated conference for Micronauts. So you'd be
Yeah.
getting in right on the ground floor there.
Yeah, so it's
Um,
March, April, May, and then it'll probably be July for Great Conf VS, or at least we really hope so.
hope
So,
so. Usually
yeah,
July for that,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So here we go. The Groovy conferences season is in sight.
Okay, now one other thing I guess I should mention, you're out of the country. Did you put in an absentee ballot or not?
I'm not a citizen, so I'm not allowed to.
Oh, you're one of those dangerous foreigners they warn us about? Is that the idea?
Yes, and I thought about voting because no one needs an ID to vote, but then I decided I want.
Decided not to do that. Well,
Yeah.
I'm actually was going to go this morning and I heard that there are lines everywhere. It's actually pretty crowded. My wife went over and said the lines move pretty quickly, but still, of course, I'm in a small, uh, tiny little town in Connecticut that, there it's just not going to be that crowded, no matter even if everybody showed up. But that the turnout is very, very high, which I think is good. And I figure I'll just head over after we finish this and make sure I voted. So anyone else hearing this today, of course, you're always encouraged to vote in general, just on general principles. I personally think it's particularly important this time around. But I suppose that's all I'll say about that. I'm just glad we're doing this today because I need a distraction today. And if we did it tomorrow and things don't work out well, it would not be a pleasant
Yeah,
podcast.
no, I bet you'll be happy by the end of the day.
I'm really I'm afraid to get my hopes up. You know what I mean?
That's
Because nothing has ever mattered, but I really want this to matter a lot. And
yeah. No, I bet you'll be pretty happy by the end of
so,
the
if you're not a citizen, what are you? Are you green card?
day. No, not even that yet. I'm on a working visa. I'm proud Israeli in the Silicon Valley for now.
So they could toss you out anytime they wanted.
No, that's not what really happens. They can
Good.
toss out people that come here illegally and stuff, but I'm pretty safe.
I hope so. I definitely hope so. But I
Yeah.
used to think we were a lot safer than it turns
Oh
out.
no, that's true. That's true. I mean, obviously it's the. I mean, the rules and the laws didn't change. It's just the enforcement is much more rigid now,
Yeah.
and one
And
can claim
harsh.
that one can claim that if the rules and laws are there, they're there to be enforced. But that's a whole different discussion, and
Yeah.
we won't get to it at all.
That's probably for the best. Jen is living in Berlin now. And
Yes.
now that she's working for Gradle, there's actually a Gradle office right in Berlin. So it turns out it was incredibly convenient for her anyway. But at any rate, we'll see how things go. So let's see. We'll have to do another podcast in a few weeks, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we're looking forward to these new releases coming out. And I'm hoping I could sit into some of that Micronaut, some of the Micronaut presentations and maybe play with it. And anything you want to mention that you've got coming up in your future?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there is uh, uh, DevRelCon happening tomorrow. I guess that's a little bit too late to invite people to it. And but Jen, take note. Next year you should be in one of those, and there is one in San Francisco, one in London.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to actually the vacation all the way to December, and we will talk. We will talk by then.
And I think Jeff Brown is doing a big Micronaut presentation at the Rich Web Experience, that the conference in Florida,
Yeah.
as part of the No Fluff Just Stuff conference series, who is kind enough to host our homepage. The No Fluff conferences end next week. I'll be in DC, and then after that, I'm not actually involved in any of the December conferences, so I'll be finished for the year. That will end most of my travel, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I have couple of things in December. Actually going to Munich for DevOps Con, and then there is KubeCon in Seattle. But yeah, it's almost done. The season is
okay. And we'll also say thank you, I suppose, to again to Sergio for his the Groovy calamari, right? Which most recent issue had a lot on Micronaut in it, and I expect that to continue. And I think that's everybody we were supposed to say thank you to. Are we all set?
Yeah, I think we're all set.
Well, hey, this is a slightly shorter podcast than normal, and maybe people will appreciate that, so they'll have more time to go vote or whatever, unless they're listening to this in line, which is also fine. Okay,
all right. Thank you very much. That was great, and see you soon. And bye bye.
Okay.